And the topic of our first panel is the end of the age of oil. And I would like to invite Mr. AKITO Matsumoto to deliver his keynote. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here to discuss energy issue. But before discussing anything, I have to give the IMF disclaimer. The views expressed in this presentation are those of mine, and do not necessarily the views of IMF, its executive board, or IMF management. So Howard asked me to discuss the end of the age of oil. I'm trying to bridge the big picture of yesterday's the future of energy session to more oil-specific issues. So nonetheless, I will talk about oil as a source of energy. So it's among energy. So my presentation is close to probably consensus views of energy experts. So I don't say that people won't use oil anymore in any time soon. So it's not the end of usage of oil. It's not like that. Rather, I will first explain what we should expect regarding energy mix in the future as a baseline. And then I will talk about what kind of risks, challenges, and opportunities we might face. So what is the end of the age of oil, or what is the age of oil in that sense? I would say the time when the share of oil in primary energy supply is the largest. So that's the age of oil. So the end of the age of oil is its share dropping from the top. So oil occupied dominant share of primary energy supply so far. However, it has been declining from 1970s, as you can see from this figure that's provided by IEA. It is still the top source of primary energy as of today. And what we should expect in the future. So oil's share of primary energy supply continues to decline further. Coal is expected to lose most as renewable getting cheaper. And natural gas supply is expected to grow faster than total energy demand growth. So that means the share of energy, natural gas is expected to increase. So IEA new policy scenario shows that oil and natural gas share takes similar share in 2040. Of course, this is projection, and IEA is clear about assumption that to make this new policy scenario. So in other words, the end of age of oil could come around that time, but it could be earlier, or it could be later, or it might not come. So the share is declining. However, I have to make sure that oil demand and supply continue to grow. So this is level is a little bit different story. So even coal may grow. So while the share of oil in primary energy demand and supply decrease, oil demand level is expected to continue to grow at the rate slower than economic growth or total energy demand growth. So what's the difference between the economic growth and the oil demand growth? So one is efficiency. So when people when that economic activity grows faster, that typically we need more energy, but efficiency gains can offset some of the driving force from that. And energy transition, that is we move us from oil to the other source of energy. So that's the key things that we have to think in terms of thinking future of oil. In the later session today that Howard organized, that experts discuss natural gas, alternative energy, and efficiency. So you can get more thoughts from these sessions too. So I said that oil demand is going to increase, is expected to increase. So what is the source of oil demand growth? So we kind of know OECD is facing peak demand. So you might going to see the reduction in the oil demand in the level, and this is coming from aging and slower economic growth. So non-OECD country is the source of growth. Emerging market economy, so rise of middle income class leads to increased use of automobile and other transportation such as jet fuels. And developing countries also switching from coal to or even biomass to oil in some cases. So while we kind of started to see peak demand story in OECD country, non-OECD still we're gonna see the little bit increase of oil demand. What about the peak oil supply that some in the past we have to worry about it? Well, actually, if you look at the proven reserve level, which is, of course, with a lot of estimate, but it's been increasing trajectory. So, should we worry about it? My answer is probably no. So, technological progress that had helped the increase of proven reserve, such as ultra deep water, extra heavy oil, and US tight oil, which is shale oil. And these things add the new supply of oil. And even lower oil, during lower oil prices, that oil producers have to cut costs to compete. So that also stimulated technological progress, and that's also make it some of the reserve more economically viable option, even lower price. So instead of peak oil supply risks that people worried about before, we now have to worry about the risk of stranded asset. That is, not all currently proven reserve may not be tapped. So, instead of worry about, we might gonna run out of oil, in some cases, in the future, we may have to actually worry about that we might not use all the oil that we have. So that's the new risk that the Bank of England, Mark Carney also expressed the concern that the financial sector is taking asset of oil sector. But this is something I may have to also worry about in the future, that in some cases that the oil producer has to face this stranded asset risk. But this is, of course, risk scenario right now. So as I said before, that the key things that dictates oil's future is, one is technology. So technological innovation is important, not only supply side, that as I said in before the previous slide, that such as shale oil or ultra deep water, the consumer also had technological progress. So one important factor of technological progress is, of course, it's dictated by economics. Higher oil price typically stimulated energy-saving technology. You can see this picture of R&D spending and the oil prices. It's correlate quite well. So when oil price is high, people try to think about how to save energy. And sometimes it works right away, sometimes it doesn't. The another factor is not economics, but it's environment. Concerns regarding CO2 and other pollutant emission will play additional role going forward. As shown, China and India are main driver of increasing demand of oil that I showed a little bit before. They realized the issue of local pollutant as well as global warming. So they try to switch from coal to cleaner energy because of local pollutant. And they might go into the electric vehicle from gasoline-driven cars. So they probably worry about global warming, but they worry about more local pollutant. So that's my take. So the economics and the environment are key factor that how technology is going to change. So technological innovation is not always bad for energy producers. Of course, carbon capture and utilization might be able to save fossil fuels. If you can utilize the carbon emission, then there's no issue of global warming. So in that sense, that carbon capture technology is important, and also for coal producer, clean coal technology might help as well. So in order to stimulate technological progress, of course, policy intervention may be needed. The other factor that in the energy mix, what is important is energy transition. So the renewables grow faster than fossil fuels as it becomes cheaper. Of course, there's obstacles to face. First, that even the renewable grows much faster than the fossil fuel usage. Currently, that the share of these alternative renewables, which is like solar and wind, is roughly 2% of primary energy demand. Even if it's increased like 7–8%, which is very fast, in 2040, it's probably like 6%. So it's not going to be dominant at all. It's still a small share of primary energy. So it's an important factor, but it's not the taking share of fossil fuel at that point yet. The challenge that this renewables facing this battery technology and intermittency issue. So if you look at, this is one day that I look at California Independent System Operators generation. And if you look at it, that during daytime, of course, that renewables power generation increased dramatically. But it's not always the time that you want to use electricity. So what you can do is that you can use battery to smooth it out, or you can use something else to compensate. So natural gas is probably that in this sense that is at least it's important that in this conjunction that when that solar is not working, natural gas has to step in to generate electricity. So that's natural gas might be actually complement to the renewable. In any case, that progress of renewable will probably push fossil fuel demand lower in the long run. Although natural gas, in the meantime, it's a little bit unclear what is the impact from this one. And when we talk about the long term of oil's future, important is, of course, climate change. And unfortunately, without major technological progress, CO2 level is expected to increase, and we might not hit this 2 degrees target. And policy and technology are the two key areas that we have to address in this issue. Policy is intervention is typically negative for coal and oil, and less probably so for natural gas. What IMF is advocating is that cutting fossil fuel subsidies and the potential implementation of a carbon tax and the pollutant regulations. These are typically bad for the fossil fuels. In terms of technology that in order to achieve climate change goal, that renewables and batteries are important, and efficiency gains, and for fossil fuel producer, that carbon capture technology is important to offset these negative effects. So to wrap up, so oil's future depends on, of course, economic growth. Typically, that the economic growth, if it's growing 3%, the oil demand or energy demand is increasing roughly 1%. If it's 4% economic growth, it's 2%. So that's kind of rule of thumb. But this, I deleted, if its economic growth is 4%, I said 2%. So this difference, 2%, is coming from efficiency gain. So efficiency gain is typically 2%. But these things can change. And the policy is, as I said, it's important. Subsidy, carbon tax, regulations, and technology. So the new type of energy supply, so not only just shale oil, but renewables, fuel cell, hydromethanes, much more, and efficiency gains, as I said, and energy transition to natural gas, renewables. So these mixes and carbon capture technology. I want to repeat for the many oil producers to think about this as a good investment, potential good investment if you can come up with this technology. And economists tend to think of this technological progress as exogenous shock. So this is something bad about economists. Engineers working on this technology, but economists think this is random shock. But we should at least keep an eye on what's going on in this technological progress. And we missed, in many cases, that shale oil revolution. And this is coming from that we took it as random shock. But it has been happening. And we have to keep an eye on these technological progress. And that's probably the most important factor talking about oil's future. Thank you very much.